It's time for Screen Junkies Movie Fights.
What in the world? It's Movie Fights, everybody. Hashtag Movie Fights Live. We're not live today. We're pre-recorded. But you know what? Pretend that it's live and just tweet along and maybe we will respond. Also, I want to give a shout out to Owl Nation. Hoot hoot. Hashtag Owl Nation. What up, MIGA hooligans? Let's meet our combatants for the day. Oh, stepping outside of the booth to fight, it's my biological father, Scott MANTZ.
Yes, my son Hal. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, my son. Mazel tov.
By the way, more proof that I'm a trained monkey that just says what's in front of him. Stepping out of the booth to fight, I think that was there for JTE. And your name was stepping out of the booth. Yeah, no, he talks movie reviews on Collider, and is my biological father.
My son, I'm so
and the
proud.
most energy in the business.
Energy, baby.
Yes.
Come on. Back on Movie Fights. Wow.
I should have had some coffee.
Me too. Feel free to tweet and ask us what booth Scott stepped out of. His Superman phone booth, right?
Yeah, it was definitely what we're talking about. Given our focus today,
Yeah.
maybe it was
perhaps.
phone booth before these things came along.
Indeed. Also, a close personal friend of Nicole Kidman. I
My
should have
pal,
introduced you.
Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
She was so sweet. I did a Q&A with her for Destroyer at the ArcLight Cinerama Dome. Sold out screening.
Yes.
800 people, and she sends me flowers.
Amazing, amazing. I'm going to send you flowers as well if you win today. Next up, he's part of the Only Stupid Answers podcast with J.D. Woolridge. Welcome back to the show, Sam BASHOR.
Thank you for having me. First time, very excited.
Oh, first time.
First time.
Also,
Yeah.
it says here, welcome back to the show.
Wow. It feels like I've been here.
We're just still getting up to speed here, aren't we there, mister?
Sam, great to have you.
Thank you.
This red-headed gentleman, I'm kidding. I had to do the trifecta. I know she made her first appearance in the debut death match, and she showed out, and she is back again to put it down. KLEE WIGGINS.
KLEE.
Hello.
Welcome back to the party, KLEE. Glad to have you.
Boys.
And deciding each round is going to be myself and the Dans. Let's take a look at the Dan cam. Yeah.
Dan's.
Holding it down on some judging and some facts, Mr. Dan Murrell.
Dan.
This is going to be a fun
Happy
show to
birthday,
judge.
Dan.
Yes. So I maybe should have said this at the top, but if you clicked on it, you probably saw in the thumbnail. We are talking 1989, the 30th anniversary of that year. Dan, what were you up to back in 1989?
I was falling in love with Batman.
Yes.
I was in kindergarten, and I had Batman Converse. That's what I remember about 1989.
Nice. Okay, since you mentioned the Batman Converse, would you take off one of your shoes and hold it up for the camera? Dan is wearing some dope-ass Vans today.
Look at that.
Look at those Spider Vans.
Nice.
Spider Vans. Spider Vans.
Christmas gift. I would never have bought these for myself, but I love them.
Yeah, those are sick.
You need to treat
Awesome.
yourself more, Dan.
So I have
And,
not changed in the last 30 years, or will not change in the past. Are we in 1989, or are we just talking about it? I don't even know.
Scott got in Bill and Ted's phone booth. I got in the DeLorean, and we're back in 1989.
I will
back
not
in
have
1989.
changed in 30 years, Hal.
There we go. And she is a delightful angel sent from heaven above, and she's usually the voice of the people, but today she will be sounding off with her own opinions on the rounds. Danielle Radford.
Hi,
Oh,
Danielle.
yes. Hello. No polls. So it will just be me having my own opinions and being a human. But yeah, please continue to tweet at the Movie Lights Live hashtag, because we will be checking those out throughout the show.
Oh, heck yes. Danielle, thank you so much. Again, here's how it works. It's a best of 7, so first person with 4 points takes the game. And we're gonna have 3 regular rounds. After those 3 rounds, the top 2 scorers will move into a one-on-one speed round where it's anybody's game. Someone can be down 3-0 and make a furious comeback in the speed round. Are you guys ready to do this?
Let's do this. Sam, KLEE, let's do this.
Hey, Billy Biz,
Ready to go.
drop that sick-ass package.
I'm ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's main event time.
All right. Thank
Sick
you,
ass.
Thor.
All the movies.
Oh, yeah.
That was wonderful.
All the fight sequences in every movie ever. Okay, question number 1. All right, let's just start off with a biggie, shall we? What was the best movie of 1989? And we're going to start with the man to my left, Scott MANTZ.
Well, my son and KLEE and Sam, here we go. The best movie of 1989. You know, when we were first asked this question, it was a no-brainer for me. It was a no-brainer for me to pick this film. It is a film that was groundbreaking, trailblazing, a movie that still holds up by today's standards, a movie that is timeless and timely and relevant, not just in '89, but today. This is the landmark film written and directed by Spike Lee called Do the Right Thing. This is a film about a clash of races that happens on a very, very hot day in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of New York City. Italians, African Americans, Asians, Jews, you name it. They all come together for an explosive film that builds with tension, and is boiling just like the heat of New York on that fateful day, and builds to a climax that was shocking and provocative. It was then, it was now. The movie was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, supporting actor for Daniel Aiello, and for screenplay for Spike Lee. And this is still Spike Lee's best movie. It is a film that we are still talking about all these years later, 30 years later, because it is still timely because of the issues that it talks about. I'll get to that soon.
All right, Movie Man's coming in with Do the Right Thing. Sam.
Hell of an argument, but let's just bring it back to a second to the thing that we are all here for, to talk about movies. And when it comes to our childhood, what are the most important ones? It usually comes back to sci-fi. You got Star Wars right there. You got RoboCop right there. What's right here? That's a DeLorean.
DeLorean, right.
No, so we had Back to the Future coming out within the 80s, and it was a masterpiece, but how can you top that? How could you possibly? You stretched it over 3 different time periods, and not only that, you up the ante when it comes to the character arcs of all of the characters we're introduced to, Marty, Doc, and his family, but also, and you get wonderful set pieces of what 2015 might look like. Look at that fashion statement. What wonderful suspenders that young girl has. But most importantly, we get to one of the greatest parts of the first film is the wish fulfillment of like, what if you could go back and actually like improve your own life, your family's life. But when it comes to that, you also kind of get the like the oppressed becoming the oppressor to Biff. We see that, and also those consequences when it comes to seeing Marty grow up and become kind of a loser and not being able to really have control over his own life, and so taking that into your own hands and taking that story and spreading it out through 3 different decades, and it just gives you the perfect adventure. And this is actually not even a contest. This is the best trilogy, and this is the jewel of that trilogy.
All right. Thank you, Sam. KLEE.
I have thoughts about that last sentence, but we'll wait on that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing there, KLEE.
So my pick for this, and if you really think about it, I'm right, and it's Batman. We would not have had the Blade movies without Batman. I don't think we would have the current Marvel and DCU, whatever you might think about those cinematic universes, without this 1989 Batman really showing us what a comic book movie actually can be. We were left in a drought after Superman in the 70s because those sequels are trash.
Yeah.
Although I do watch Superman 2 a little bit more than somebody should.
That's good.
But
Kneel before Zod. Come on.
yes, I mean, Terrence Stamp is Terrence Stamp.
Yeah.
So, but Batman '89 showed us what a comic book movie truly can be. That it can be good filmmaking as well as entertaining. That it can be good acting as well as servicing the storyline and what the comic books were at that time. Because at that time, I think that was when the beginning of The Dark Knight. So Batman '89, I really don't have much more to say about it because I'm right. So I don't know if this is even a fight.
All right. Well, wait till we get a load of this fight. Fight it out.
Fight it out. First of all, okay, KLEE, I'm going to go with you on this. Yes, Batman did get the superhero genre back on track after Superman 3 and Superman 4 killed that version of the franchise. Batman is a very good film. It's directed by Tim Burton. It was very, very, very heavily stylized. It was a movie that took itself very seriously and showed how great the superhero movies can be. But Batman, it doesn't hold up as well because, first of all, it's not about Batman. I watch Batman for the Joker. I watch it for Jack Nicholson. And compared to many of the superhero movies that followed, including all 3 movies of the Dark Knight trilogy, the original Batman doesn't hold up. It's a good movie. It's a very good film. It's one of the best of '89, but not the best. And I'm sorry, Sam, Back to the Future Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, Back to the Future, love the first movie. Liked the third film, the Western. I hated Back to the Future Part 2. Back to the Future Part 2 is a mess. All of the heart and soul of the original Back to the Future was lost in Back to the Future Part 2 because it was so confusing, jumping back and forth. It got too dark. Back to the Future, overall, I love the trilogy because of the first movie and because of the third. I think Back to the Future 3, the Western, is underrated, but Back to the Future Part 2 is a mess. Back to the Future Part 2, Back to the Future overall, it's not the greatest trilogy, not even close. The 2 greatest trilogies of all time are Lord of the Rings and Planet of the Apes. Those are the 2 best trilogies of all time. The modern Planet of the Apes with Andy Serkis. That's the one I'm talking about.
You're close with that one. You're close with that one. But when it comes to Wish Fulfillment, I have to disagree a little bit. And also, Batman, you got to give Batman credit because Batman, again, that's why we're here. And the fact that you could take a superhero movie and have like a very unique and distinct style to it, it's wonderful. But I kind of have to agree. It feels a little bit soulless. It's a lot of explosions and pretty colors and beautiful art style. Besides that,
I think you're thinking of Joel Schumacher.
Oh no, the nips you can't forget. I know those, but no, these movies they're beautiful, but that's about it. Honestly.
Oh, okay, first of all, Batman '89 is not a bunch of beautiful colors. It's mostly blue. Second of all,
Shapes.
Second of all superheroes are about their villains. No superhero doesn't exist without a supervillain because you need a superhero to fight a supervillain, but you don't need a superhero to be a supervillain. So that's all. If you look at any comic book movie of any time, they only exist because, and they only become to fruition and realize their full potential because of the supervillains that come into their realm. It doesn't happen without that. So I'm gonna have to just negate your point, Boo. I'm so sorry.
All right. Well,
Interesting.
The thing about Do the Right Thing is that here is a film that was about us in 1989 and about us now. But the police brutality. Look at, 2 years after Do the Right Thing came out, you had Rodney King. And then, over the years, between Rodney King to Trayvon Martin and beyond, this is still something that is happening, and is happening with increasing frequency, which makes Do the Right Thing more relevant and timely than ever. This is a movie that stirred conversation. A lot of people watched the film, and it made them talk, like, how can we make things better? It was a movie that touched on something. Back to the Future overall, Back to the Future is a lot of fun. Back to the Future Part 2 is a mess,
Wonderful.
But I could see why people like it. But it's entertainment. Batman is entertainment. Do the Right Thing is a socially and morally conscious film that is about us. It is a movie that inspires us to have conversation, to make things better. And it's also Spike Lee firing on all cylinders. It was his third movie, but it was the one that really put him on the map. It was nominated for a Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival that year in 1989. And it was also a film that, when I think of Spike Lee, with all his movies, more than 20 feature films, more than 10 documentaries, very prolific. He could do big movies. He can do daring films, and he's right now he's scoring with one of his very best movies, one of them, Black Klansman. And when I think of Spike Lee, I think of, I want to be provoked. I want to be inspired to have conversation. I want to think. And thinking is what Do the Right Thing does, and that is why it is the best movie of 1989.
I'll give you that. Do the Right Thing is Spike Lee's best film. I'm not a huge Spike Lee fan. He gave me a B once in a writing class, but that's not
The NYU?
no, at Clark in Atlanta.
Wow.
But it is his best film, but when I go to the movies, I want to be entertained. I can think on my own, and that's what books are for. If I want to be provoked every single day over race issues, all I have to do is walk outside my house. You may not have the same experience. I don't know if that might be a thing for you guys. But I'm saying what Batman did was it changed the movie landscape. It changed how especially how comic book movies were made from there on out. Every single comic, we didn't get these campy, cartoony comic book movies ever again. Not on the big screen. We never got those not ever, in 30 years. But we had them for 40, 50 years before that. And so it completely changed that landscape, and it completely changed how we see that genre of movie. Do the Right Thing, for all of its thought-provoking, intentions, didn't really change anything. Every movie thinks it can change the world of that type, and it never really actually does. Yeah, it sparks conversation, but conversation, what does that do? It doesn't get anybody. I mean, it might inspire a few people, and that's cute, but it doesn't actually do anything.
I think you can go to a movie to be provoked and
disagree.
entertained at the same time. I mean, I'm all for mindless entertainment, but I am also more for movies that inspire me to really think, and have conversation. That is more entertaining to me than anything. You were going to say something.
Oh, and I just wanted to bring up, I wanted to actually piggyback off your point that, when I go to the movies too, like, I want to learn. I want to be inspired, and I want to have my eyes opened. But really, at the end of the day, what sticks with us are the things that kind of open our eyes to, like, a new fantastic world, and also to kind of just dig at Batman a little bit, have characters that we actually care about, and be an original property. That, like, these are new original creations from writers and directors.
But you're talking about an inferior sequel.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm talking
Back to
about
the
the peak of the trilogy. No, I'm talking about the thorough and well-made continuation of original characters with stories that span over some of.
It
It is.
No,
It is.
All right, let's go ahead.
One more thing about your.
Scott, go ahead and make your point, and then let's shift gears into final thoughts.
I will say that 1989's Batman did bring the genre, the superhero movie genre, back after the last two Superman movies were terrible, but it did not change the future of the genre. That didn't happen. That did not happen until 2000, when the first X-Men came out. Ever since the first
would not have
X-Men,
gotten that movie without X-Men,
But you see,
without
the
Batman.
Superman movies came and went. The first wave of Batman movies came and went. With the fourth Batman movie in 1987, the one with George Clooney, that was terrible, and that almost killed superhero movies.
Almost, but not quite.
Then, wait a minute. No, it was 2000's X-Men that revitalized everything. The X-Men led to Spider-Man, led to The Dark Knight, led to the MCU.
Go ahead and
All right.
let's go into your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Do the Right Thing is a movie that people are still talking about. The issues and the events that happen in Do the Right Thing happen all the time. They happen everywhere, and in a lot of cases, these events are referenced in back to Do the Right Thing. These are issues that we see play out in time ever since 1989, when this movie opened. It is Spike Lee's masterpiece. It's a masterpiece film, from Rosie Perez dancing to Public Enemy's Fight the Power to the big explosive scene at the end. Every moment in Do the Right Thing counts. It's a brilliant film.
Thank you, Scott. Sam.
What I need from my movies is adventure, I need scale, and I need characters that I care about, and you get that in Back to the Future Part 2. Also, with that movie, we get Part 3, which we liked, so you kind of can't have the 2 without the 3. But also, it's just a wonderful piece of sci-fi that is original to cinema and who has actually inspired many people to actually create career paths that has changed how we see cinema and how our movies are made today.
Thank you, Sam. KLEE.
I'm just going to rebut one of your points in that Batman did change it, because we would not have had X-Men without Batman, which begat Blade, which begat the X-Men. So that's right there is the point. Next, Back to the Future 2. I'm sorry, it's trash. It makes no sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
No, it makes no sense.
Time travel.
The fact is, none of the promises of that movie were ever fulfilled in actuality.
Cubs won. Cubs won.
Jaws 30.
Yeah, Rocky 16.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, we'll get to but it doesn't fulfill any of it. The promise, Back to the Future 3 is only good because Michael J. Fox almost died on that movie. That's the only reason why that movie is almost good, is that he almost got his neck broken.
Really?
But it's
I
great
did not
little-
know that.
Great little piece of Hollywood lore. And Do the Right Thing, for all of its Spike Lee's most iconic film, but it's not necessarily an iconic film in and of itself. I don't see it as being part of the conversation about race these days when we're talking about race in cinema. It's one of the ones, it's sort of a little bit of a grandfather of that, and that's interesting and that's fine.
But I don't that's a good thing.
It is a good thing, but I would say that I would argue that Batman is much more of a trailblazer in its field than Do the Right Thing as a trailblazer in its lane. And that's what my point is. So I would say Batman 89 it's
Time. All right. Wow. 3 very different films, some great arguments. Dan, where are we on the facts?
Well, I mean, it's a quality fight, so not really any factual issues. If you're just going to different groups, IMDb voters voted Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade their favorite film,
That was my
1989.
second choice.
That one's gonna put that.
The Academy Awards chose Driving Miss Daisy as their pick for Best Picture of
That movie
1989.
is
Do the Right
problematic.
Thing, famously not nominated for Best Picture that year. And we talk about the summer and how crowded the summers are these days. It's easy to forget how crowded they used to be, too, because Do the Right Thing opened on June 30th. The week before, Batman opened, June 23rd, against Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And Ghostbusters 2 opened the week before that. So the summer's always been a crazy minefield of movies.
Dan, that was a nice little trip in the way back machine.
Thank you.
Oh,
Back to the
come on,
Future Part 2
Ghostbusters.
opened in November, by the way. So.
Gotcha. Great. So, yeah, we heard some, again, like Dan said, this was very subjective, obviously. We're talking about the quality of the films. And Sam, I really admire your passion for this film, but you were getting hammered on both sides.
I was.
And
Felt a little unfair.
Yeah, it
Felt a little unfair.
Yeah,
I took it like a champ.
Yeah, it was like it was like a wrestling match. You were just like taking elbows and everything. And yeah, when Scott dinged you with like it lost its heart and soul the first, and it was a mess. We didn't really have a comeback for that. Just that you liked it. So for me, it came down to KLEE and Scott, and I thought KLEE made a great point when she said that. Okay, maybe Do the Right Thing, opened up this conversation, had a lot to say, but it doesn't change the conversation, and no film can. And you know what? I think that's a good point. Well, what are you going to do to change someone's heart? Sit them down and watch a movie? But that being said, there were some dings against Batman, even though it holds a special place in my heart.
Because I'm right.
Is it style over substance? Is there enough to latch onto? At the end of the day, Scott made the best argument to me that it's a provocative piece of entertainment, and it's very entertaining from the Public Enemy soundtrack to the bombastic action throughout the film. And it is really thought-provoking, and I thought it resonated with me when you brought back just, when you mentioned things like, Trayvon Martin and occurrences like that, and you go back and you see what happened to Radio Raheem in Do the Right Thing. Yep. It really spoke to me because I consider that film one of Spike Lee's two masterpieces, that and Malcolm X. So I thought you hit all the right notes on that. I'm going with Scott and Do the Right Thing.
Thank you.
Dan.
I thought, unfortunately, Back to the Future 2 was the odd movie out for me in this argument. So it was between Batman and Do the Right Thing for me. And I actually love the construction of both arguments, and I was very convinced by both. I think that the sort of putting the importance of Do the Right Thing versus the game-changing nature of Batman, those were two really great angles to go at each other. Ultimately, I think that there were more holes punched in the fact that while Batman led to a resurgence of comic book films in the short term, I think the argument that it itself permanently changed everything, I thought there's some good knockbacks against that. And so I'm also going to go with Scott and Do the Right Thing.
Scott, you take the point.
My first point in like a year.
All right. So it is 1 for Scott, Sam, and KLEE looking to get on the board. Just for shits and gigs, Danielle, what would you have chosen?
Oh, we have time now because I don't have to check in with anyone else.
Yeah.
I agree. Both arguments were great, but I do feel like when it came to some of the parries, like kind of the fighting back against the other arguments, I did think that Scott did the better job. But they were both really, really fantastic arguments.
I mean,
Thank you.
it's such
And also, Sam,
Thank you.
I love your sunglasses.
All right, wait. Question. Where did you see Batman for the first time? Do you remember?
At the Coronet Theater on Gary Boulevard in San Francisco, California.
Wow.
Where did you see Back to the Future?
In my neighborhood in Santa Clarita, California, when I was 3 years old.
I saw Do the Right Thing at the New Orleans 8 movie theater in Northeast Philadelphia.
Wow.
There you go.
How about it? Yeah, that's your argument. It was like, what's better, hamburgers or pizza? It's like, all right. Question number 2. Timothy Dalton returned as 007 James Bond in 1989's License to Kill. Had Pierce Brosnan not taken over the role, what 80s star should have been the next Bond? Ooh, interesting. And we're going to start with Sam.
Ooh, interesting. Thank you so much for having me here. I would like to talk about the king of small screens, big screens. Let's talk about Sean Bean for a second. Someone who's actually already has a little bit of his own corner in the James Bond universe for GoldenEye. He was actually considered for the role of James Bond, which was a fun little tidbit that I was able to look into when I was researching this. But no, this man, as soon as he steps on screen, you understand like that he is a man who actually has a plan. I'm pretty sure that's what he would be like in his personal life as well. The way he's able to take not only his own like maybe personal sorrow or the sorrow of the character, but then turn it into something that you can really latch onto with longevity. So possibly I would love to see him maybe do a couple of these movies, but you know, a little too late. But no, I think, and also we've seen him go hand to hand with action when it comes to Lord of the Rings, and we've seen just a touch of it when it came to Game of Thrones. He got nerfed a few times, so that didn't last for very long. But I think in his prime, and also we see it in GoldenEye as well, but in his prime, I feel like he could have brought something really special and someone who really embodies the charisma of James Bond for that era. So that's me.
All right, he's great at dying. Would he have been a great Bond? KLEE.
Okay, I am admittedly fighting a bit of a dark horse, but this person was also considered for the role of James Bond, and he actually came in the top 3, I believe, if my research is correct, and that is Simon McCorkindale of Manimal and Jaws 3D fame.
Wow. Yeah, there was a short-lived show in the 80s called Manimal where this guy would turn into animals.
Show ever.
Wow. All right.
And I am just old enough to have loved the shit out of that show. Where he was an English professor who turned into animals and helped the LAPD solve crimes. So, but he was very smooth. He's very suave. He's sadly no longer with us. He died in 2010, but he would have been a perfect James Bond. He had the look. He would have been a bit of a departure from the dark-haired James Bonds of the past without the big jump that we eventually made to Daniel Craig. He would have been, but to have the same smoothness and suaveness, as I think, as Timothy Dalton and Roger Moore had. But I think he had a bit of a rough edge side, as we could see in Jaws 3D and Manimal, and also on Falcon Crest.
Which is like a nighttime soap opera.
For those of you out there that don't recall, it was not Dallas and not Dynasty. It was Falcon Crest.
Boom.
And so I think he would have made a great James Bond. And as you can see from the photo that they put up earlier, he looks great in a tux.
All right, KLEE uncorking a little McCorkindale. Scott.
Yeah. Okay, here's my... Now, first of all, we are talking about late 80s, moving into the 90s. So because of that, you have to look at the time. You have to look at the time, not with perspective now because of what happened to this actor's fall from grace in the 2000s. So you cannot include that because you're going back to the late 80s and early 90s. And at that time, Mel Gibson was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and he deserved to be. You're talking about an actor who had depth and gravitas in The Road Warrior. He made just in the 80s, he made 2 great Lethal Weapon movies that really demonstrated his action chops, his comedy, his charm, his sexiness. And you talk about an actor who would look great in a tux. You talk about an actor who, yes, he was considered for the role of James Bond. Now, here's why Mel Gibson would have been the best of these 3 choices. Because, you know what, the Timothy Dalton movies, I thought Living Daylights was okay, License to Kill was bad. Living Daylights made $51 million, and License to Kill, 1989, made $35 million. You needed someone to put the James Bond movies back on track. You needed a bankable, box office, reliable star that everyone loved, that women loved and men wanted to be. That person is Mel Gibson. He He's great looking, charming, funny, sexy, has grit and gravitas, obviously can do action. Has a dangerous edge to him, a dangerous physical edge to him that would have put him in the ranks of a Sean Connery James Bond. So there you go.
All right, fight it out, y'all.
Okay, I have one thing to say. Mel Gibson is Australian. So you cannot join MI6 if you're not British.
But you know what? He's an actor.
Yeah. Who's an Australian, and they famously never hire somebody who's not British to play James Bond. There's been American actors who've been considered to be James Bond. They considered P. Diddy at one point. It doesn't matter because he is Australian. I have nothing to say about Mel Gibson's fall from
Dan,
grace.
please fact check that.
P. Diddy was considered for James Bond?
Yeah.
He was
I'm
considered. By the way, he was born in New York. He was raised in Australia.
Yeah, so he's an American Australian.
Doesn't matter. He's an actor.
Yeah, Scott, you're not helping me.
He's from Peekskill, New York.
Just because they haven't cast anyone who wasn't British doesn't mean they wouldn't. They just haven't yet.
They won't. It's never going to happen. It's like making a Harry Potter teacher. If you're going to have a Hogwarts teacher be American, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Okay, who the hell is Sam McCorkindale?
It's a great last name.
It's Simon.
Simon.
And he was
Simon. Exactly my point.
He was a huge just because he didn't go on to a huge career doesn't mean that he wouldn't have made a great James Bond. At the time, he was as famous as Pierce Brosnan at that time. Go back and Dan, fact check that shit. At the time, he was as famous as Pierce Brosnan. He was on a bunch of shows. He played that crazy scientist in Jaws 3D. That's what he did instead of doing James Bond, by the way.
There's no way. If you're going to put James Bond back on track, bring people back in the theaters, give James Bond back.
But they were considering Pierce Brosnan. They were considering
the guy from Jaws 3D and Animal. You're not considering
a British actor that no American audience had never heard of. That was Sean Bean. And then they were considering two British actors who were on American television shows at that time, and that was Pierce Brosnan and Simon McCorkindale. They didn't do Pierce Brosnan because he couldn't get out of his contract with Remington Steel. Simon McCorkindale was their next choice, and they didn't cast him because Timothy Dalton decided to come back. The only reason why they were even going to recast in the first place is because Timothy Dalton had said he wasn't going to come back. He was the second choice. Mel Gibson, for all of it, Mel Gibson has better shit to do than to be James Bond, first of all, at that time.
Mel Gibson was considered.
He was considered. He was never going to say yes.
He was born in New York, raised in Australia.
Okay, he was never going to say yes.
That's not the point. That's not the point if he was going to say yes. You're asking who should they have done. I'm telling you Mel Gibson. I'm telling you why.
Yeah.
And you know what?
If they could have got him, they would have probably picked him.
Made 4 very successful James Bond movies.
Yeah.
One of them was good. GoldenEye was the only good one. Otherwise, I felt like Pierce Brosnan looked the part, but he was a wimp. He was not a great James Bond. Go ahead, Sam.
All right, thank you. All right, so while I agree that Mel Gibson would have been a smart business decision, I feel like he would have been too expensive for them where that film was at that point.
At that point,
he is such. You're right. He's a bankable star, but he's going to cost too much money. And also, I think there might be some weird brand synergy when it comes to taking that man who you said yourself is in Lethal Weapon. This kind of, honestly, kind of like this hobo ninja, like coming in and like being that character that we love in Lethal Weapon in those films. It would have been a weird choice to make him this suave MI6 agent. It would have been.
It would have been a weird choice.
It would have been a weird one.
It wouldn't have worked. Like he would have been a bankable star. Like I'm gonna echo your point. He would have been a great bankable star at that point, and I think he maybe could have killed. But he would not have made a good James Bond. I'm just saying he would not have.
Why? You're not saying why. Why would not?
I am saying why. He would not have made a good James Bond because he doesn't fit the role. He's not suave enough for all of his charm. He's charming, not suave, and there's two different things. He's charming. He will charm the panties off of every person in this room, but he is not suave. He's not smooth.
Disagree.
And I'm sorry, but Pierce Brosnan and Timothy Dalton and Sean Connery and even Daniel Craig to a certain extent have a certain suaveness that I'm sorry that Mel Gibson.
I've heard a lot about Gibson. I've heard a lot about McCorkindale. Haven't heard a lot about Bean.
Thank you. I was enamored by the arguments. You guys have done a great job, but I have to say, when it comes to price points and when it comes to how the public at the time taking that into account, it would have been a weirder sell. Also, don't know who that is. Gotta be honest, but
Yeah.
You don't know now, but trust me, in 1989, you would have known who Simon Corkindale is.
You got a
and
point.
in 1989, you would not have known who Sean Bean is.
He would have been
because he was American
here's the thing.
famous.
He would have been lesser known, but so are most of our James Bonds, and we find out how suave and sexy and mysterious these people are because we don't know who they are going into the film. We get to figure that out through the writing of James Bond, seeing him go through these adventures, and we know that Sean Bean has the chops to pull this off, and he has the look that we need to go into this. Your guy has the look as well, but he doesn't have this. I mean,
I'll give you, Sean Bean would have been a beta Daniel Craig, and it's fine. I'm gonna let you have that.
Sean Bean was better as a villain. That's why he played the villain in GoldenEye. That's why he played the villain in a completely different series.
But think about this:
Games.
if you took
Sean Bean's good, but he's not James Bond.
But
He's
you
just
could have
not
had
James
a darker
Bond.
edge, which we have in the Daniel Craig movies from Sean Bean. We could have gotten that performance from that actor.
There is something about Mel Gibson that is dangerous. The way he was ready to hold the gun to his head in the
So
first
how is that any
Lethal
different
Weapon
from
movie.
Daniel Craig? How is
He
that any
was
different from his
a force
choice?
to be reckoned with in The Road Warrior as Mad Max. I mean, and he already had at that time 3 Mad Max movies under his belt by 1985
Yeah, only
when
one and a
Thunderdome
half of
came
which
out.
are good.
But wait a minute. The question isn't, well, would he have been too expensive? The question is, what 80 Starr should have been. We're not talking about how much he would have cost. Who cares? The fact is, obviously, MGM, Eon Productions, the Broccoli's, the producers, they knew they needed to rescue and revitalize James Bond. They doubled down on GoldenEye. That's why they got Martin Campbell to direct. That's why it was a big budget movie. And that is why they tried again and got Pierce Brosnan because he was free. Because
They always wanted Pierce Brosnan from the get-go.
Right, I'm not
as soon
arguing
as
that.
Timothy Dalton said no, so Timothy Dalton said he wasn't going to be able to do it, they went for Pierce Brosnan and he just couldn't get out of his contract. But I'm talking about what would have actually been the smart choice.
The smart choice
would have been Sean Bean.
would have been Simon
Bean
McCorkindale
is-
because he was blonde Pierce Brosnan at that time. Trust me, he was blonde Pierce Brosnan at that time.
I think you might be hyping him up just a
I
little
think
bit.
you might be too
All right,
young to
let's
remember.
I wasn't born yet.
Everybody, let's shift gears and move to our final thoughts. Sam, we'll start with you.
Sean Bean has the dark edge that we want. He was up and coming. Give you that. He didn't have the notoriety of Mel Gibson, but you don't need that for a James Bond
Yeah, you
role.
do.
You don't. No, you
do
don't.
not.
To
And
rescue it, you
don't.
do.
Okay,
you
this
don't.
is final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Please.
You don't. I don't think that you need that going into a James Bond role. And Sean Bean, from what we've seen through his just wonderful career as an actor, he has the darker edge. Repeated that, but also he has the chops to pull off action scenes, and he has the suave and sexy attitude that you just need when it goes into the James Bond character, and he can wear the hell out of a suit. There you go. That's the
All
most
right.
important point of the entire thing.
KLEE.
Simon McCorkindale can wear the hell out of a suit too, and I think much better than Sean Bean.
Okay, it's final thoughts. Please, let KLEE speak.
Sorry. Sorry.
We are very passionate about this subject. But no, Simon Corkindale can wear the hell out of a suit too, as we saw in the photograph. It's like the first thing they pulled up, obviously, it's Google image search it, and it's Simon McCorkindale in a suit. At the time, he was as famous as Pierce Brosnan, so that he would have been able to pull off the notoriety that we're so called talking about of having a name for the James Bond franchise at that time, if we're going back to at that time. And second of all, he had already proven himself to be a SWAT person who can pull off ridiculous plot contrivances and things with Manimal and Falcon Crest.
come
And
on.
then he went on to do Jaws 3D instead of when he didn't get James Bond. So come on, he got half eaten by a shark and pulled that performance off like a champion.
By the end of 1989,
All right.
by the end of 1989, James Bond franchise was pretty much dead. It would be another 6 years before we would see GoldenEye come out. MGM, the producers of the Bond series, the people who own the rights, they needed to save it. Mel Gibson would have saved it. He was bankable. He was a hell of a lot bigger than Sean Bean. He was definitely a hell of a lot bigger than Simon McCorkindale. Who the hell is this guy? Jaws 3D, Manimal. I rest my case.
would know who he is if he had gotten the role.
Okay, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I mean, Mel Gibson had he could do action. He had it all. And you know what? In the early 90s, if the news would have broke, news would have broken the trades all over the world that Mel Gibson will be the next James Bond, everybody would have gone absolutely nuts, crazy, excited. They would have said, Simon McCorkindale's the next James Bond. They would have been like, huh? If they would have said Sean Bean, they would have been like, oh, okay. But Mel Gibson, it would have been, oh my God, that's great.
Time. All right. Wow.
That was more fun for me. That was a fun one. That was really fun. I get it now.
Yeah, it was like
Heart beating.
Yeah, you were in the middle of a throwdown right there. Dan Murrell, talk to us about factuality.
Oh, so many. Okay.
Nice.
P. Diddy was not necessarily in consideration to play James Bond. He publicly said, I want to be James Bond. He made his own audition tape / fragrance commercial that cost $750,000 that he sent to the producers. So it wasn't so much that the producers were considering him to be James Bond, it was he considered himself to be James Bond.
What's the difference?
I will say, I will say that P. Diddy was very excellent in the Vince Vaughn and John Favreau film Made.
Oh, wasn't he
was
also
great
in
in
Get
that.
Him to the Greek?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great in that. Yeah.
Dan,
He's been in a
please.
few movies.
So the idea of James Bond's nationality.
Yes.
There have been some non-British James Bonds. Pierce
thank you.
Brosnan was Irish. George Lazenby was Australian. So they've always been,
Of the realm.
ties to the UK, but they don't necessarily have to be British. There is precedent for non-British citizens being cast as James Bond in James Bond films. So there's some precedent there. Now, the question about who was more famous in 1989 was Simon McCorkindale as famous as Pierce Brosnan. I can't judge popularity. Here's what I can judge. Manimal ran in 1983 for 8 episodes. It was in 90th place. Remington Steele ran for 5 seasons from 1982 to 1987 and was a top 25 show. So I think it's fair to say that it's possible, I would say feasible, that Pierce Brosnan perhaps was a better known quantity at that time than Simon McCorkindale.
Can I just pipe in? I grew up in the 80s. I was very aware. I consumed a lot of TV and movies.
Shut off the TV, Hal.
Yes, my biological father. I know who Pierce Brosnan and Remington Steele was. Today is the first day I ever heard of Simon McCorkindale. Yeah,
You've
just
heard
FYI.
of him, you just don't know.
Dan, thank you. Please go ahead and roll this into what are your thoughts on this
So
question?
this was it correct? The question, who should have been if Pierce Brosnan had not done it?
What 80s star should have been the next James Bond?
Should have been the next James Bond. I think that everybody made good arguments for their picks. I could see all of these choices doing it, but I think Scott made a great argument for why Mel Gibson, at that time, where the series was, the fact that the last couple hadn't done well, the fact that there have been Australians that have played James Bond before, although I know Mel Gibson is not 100% Australian, I think that he still made the best argument as to why Mel Gibson should have been, and not just could have been James Bond, and so that's why I'm going to side with Scott on this.
All right, that's one for Scott. Danielle.
Oh, yeah, this is really, everyone really brought really good, passionate arguments. And KLEE, you were like arguing it at a handicap. So I like, you are really this is the most Simon McCorkindale will ever be Googled.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
In like years. I'm going to actually track that and see if it winds up going up by 100 or something.
Right? Yeah, this star meter.
Oh, he passed away. I'm sad.
Simon.
Oh, Simon, you did such good work that none of us saw. So yeah, these were great. The Sean Bean arguments I also thought were really fantastic. I do with this one, I have to go with Dan because other than the arguments about like charm and suaveness and the type of character. Scott also brought in reasons for why the studio would want to hire a, before we knew things, 1989, top of the world Mel Gibson. So I've got to go with Scott.
All right, Scott MANTZ vaulting into a commanding 2-0 lead, taking the point. KLEE, it didn't help that your guy is just a weird name.
It's a great name, though.
It is a great name.
Simon McCorkindale, just think of Julian Sands.
That might have been a good answer.
But
Warlock.
Julian Sands in 1989 was like 19 years old. So.
I'm going to go with Danielle.
Wait, when
I'm
did
going to
Warlock
Google
come
this
out?
guy. I'm going to Wikipedia this guy.
No, see, I knew exactly when she said the guy from Jaws 3. I just saw him like, at the end with the grenade.
Who should take over the role now?
Dan
have
is
no
a
idea.
pillar
Think
of
about
Jaws fandom.
I am a big Jaws fan. When you said the guy from
Idris
Jaws 3, I was like, I'm that guy.
Yeah,
Idris Elba? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm with that.
All right, good stuff, you guys.
He said he doesn't wanna
But Scott Mantz is ahead 2-0. So this question, we're looking for either Sam or KLEE to get on the board here. And let's move to question number 3. Nora Ephron had a big hit in 1989 with When Harry Met Sally. Ooh, man, a lot of good movies came out that year.
Yeah, that's a good year.
What two actors are the best on-screen couple of the 80s? Best on-screen couple of the 80s? KLEE, lay it on us.
All right, my pick is, like Batman, correct. And it's Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. They did 3 movies in the 80s. They did Romancing the Stone, its admittedly lesser sequel, Jewel of the Nile, and The Amazing War of the Roses. So those are 2.5 fantastic movies. They have great chemistry, so much so that when they were filming Romancing the Stone, Michael Douglas's then wife showed up on set unannounced because she just had a feeling that something was about to go down. And so she showed up on set. You can fact check that. It's there. Romancing the Stone is one of the best romantic comedies of the 80s. I would say maybe only beaten by maybe When Harry Met Sally. War of the Roses is probably the best comedy about what it's like to break up as a couple. And it, it delves into some really dark places, but it shows even just the manifestation of the evil thoughts that can happen when you're breaking up and you've been together for a long time and you know each other's buttons so very well. But they have great chemistry. They're super sexy at that time. Kathleen Turner's voice is obviously amazing. Michael Douglas had a weird sex appeal that I still to this day cannot quantify. It is awesome. So they're my favorite couple of the 80s.
All right, KLEE coming in with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. Around the horn to Scott Mantz.
Okay, I am wearing the bling because I wanted to really support this couple as the best on-screen couple of the 80s. In fact, they started the 80s as the best on-screen couple on the highest of notes. I'm talking about Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher in The Empire Strikes Back. Now, that's Return of the Jedi. But I'm talking about, they should have shown the picture of the two of them kissing on the Millennium Falcon in the asteroid in The Empire Strikes Back. Because
in the ice cave in Hoth.
Now, they got together, they met in 1977 with the original Star Wars, which at the time was just called Star Wars. No Episode 4, no A New Hope, it was just Star Wars. But it was in The Empire Strikes Back that they really got together. And before they got together, you knew that they belonged together, you knew that they were going to get together. They're sparring in the halls of Echo Base. It was like a throwback to the classic screwball comedies, like His Girl Friday, where you knew that they were meant for each other, even though they were polar opposites and very different. Their chemistry was present even when they weren't together. And when they got together, that moment on the Falcon was the moment where the Star Wars series got sexy. It gave the Star Wars trilogy its heart. The love between Han and Leia was the heart of the Star Wars series. The relationship between Luke and Vader was the soul of it, but the relationship between Han and Leia was the heart of it, the love of it. And first of all, Empire Strikes Back, one of the best movies ever made, period. One of the top 5 greatest movies of all time, at least in my opinion. Ford and Fisher were terrific together. They had great chemistry. They were so good together that after Han was frozen in carbonite and taken away by Boba Fett, Leia's love for him was so strong that you still felt his presence. And that moment in the carbon chamber where Han says, "I love you," and Leia says, "I know," is one of the greatest, most romantic moments in movie history.
Thank you, Scott Mantz. Sam.
Thank you so much. I have really quick, love both those movies, but if we're talking about couples, I want to talk about a movie that is, there's no will they, won't they. It's just like this little message in the bottle, sending it out in the universe of, we're going to see how these two people get together, no matter what the world tries to throw in their way. I want to talk about Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah in Splash. I rewatched it recently, and I did cry. I don't care. It was great. No, the entire movie, it's just seeing how this crazy fantasy brings these two people who should never have gotten together together, and and this is not even like them meeting as adults and then bumping into each other at a coffee shop. They met each other as children, and she saves his life, and you get to see that like he becomes this like bumbling, very charming nerd trying to get his life together, and he doesn't even know how to even connect with his feelings, and she comes along and allows him to open up and just trying to discover who she is as a person. You get the chance to actually find out who he is as well, and it's just like, and not only that, you get a fantastic adventure story, and it ends the way that most of my favorite fairy tales do, with a big question mark, where you get to see them going off into the sunset together and actually getting to be happy, or there's not really a sunset under the water, but you get what I'm saying. You get spoilers, by the way. Who cares? No, you get in this movie though. It's just a perfect little touch your heart, feel good, warm your soul type of movie. And seeing those two actors on screen together, it makes you buy it and makes you just kind of fall in love with this grand mystery. And I would love a sequel. By the way, we're not doing that question. Would love a sequel, though.
All right, fight it out, everybody.
Okay, first of all, here's what I gotta say about Splash. Really good movie. I liked it a lot. But is it icon? Is it, if you pardon the expression, can I use your word?
Do it.
Is it iconic? No, it's not iconic. It's good. It's a solid. It's a sweet film. But it's not iconic. Han and Leia are iconic. Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas, yeah, they made 3 movies. Okay, Romancing the Stone, great film. Jewel of the Nile sucked. And War of the Roses showed them fighting. It showed them fighting, and that movie was a cautionary tale for marriage. And I wish I'd listened, but it is. Jesus Christ!
Oh, Dad! Ouch! Hey, I wouldn't have been born.
We're good friends. We're good friends. It's all good. But War of the Roses, I mean, they were at each other's throat. Like, how does that qualify as like a good on-screen couple? That may be like not like them together. Whatever goodwill that I got from Romancing the Stone and sort of maybe held on to after the disappointment of Jewel on the Nile. Like, I didn't think of them as a couple after I saw them in War of the Roses. I didn't want to think of them as a couple, but I still go back to The Empire Strikes. On Return of the Jedi, you see more of Han and Leia working together. But, you know, they're already together, and they're great together. They're working together as a team, especially when they're trying to infiltrate the Imperial base on the moon of Endor. But it was really in The Empire Strikes Back where you felt their chemistry together, like when they're on the asteroid and in the Falcon, and he's holding her, and she goes, "Let go," and he goes, "Sorry, sweetheart, I didn't have time for anything else." You know where this is going. You want it to go there. It does. And after they're split, you want them back. Han and Leia, Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, baby.
Except that he invades her space without consent in Empire Strikes Back, so that's a strike against them right there. Second of all, when we have on-screen couples in real life go through a bunch of up and downs. We see their will they, won't they aspect in Romancing the Stone. We see the sort of middle ground, which the middle of all relationships are sort of boring and stupid in Jewel of the Nile. And then we see
Rest my case. Thank you for making my point.
And we see the culmination of how a relationship can end poorly, but we still get a meet cute at the beginning of War of the Roses. They meet him. She kind of saves his life because he's about to get stuck on Nantucket Island or wherever the hell they are at the beginning of the movie. I can't quite remember. And she helps him get to the ferry on time, and they bone their brains out in the meantime. So we see all of those, the 2 things that you touched on, both of you touched on about your couples and how they made what made them good. We see in every aspect of Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas's on-screen relationships throughout the 3 movies that they made together.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say it's not about which is the best movie; it's about which couple. And honestly, when I sit down and watch Empire Strikes Back, like it feels like they just added that. And
I disagree completely.
No
way.
Real quick, I will say they're very pretty people and they're very talented, and that you do get moments where they really give you a good performance. But that's not something that brings me back to those movies. Those actors, for who they are as individuals, is interesting, but when they're together as a couple, I kind of just tune out, honestly. It feels like they were just trying to correct a mistake, and then they just kind of try to finish it off by the end of the 3rd movie.
And honestly, we're watching Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas because they're together in those movies, being so hot, being so charismatic together, having that great chemistry that they have together. Even when they're fighting with each other in War of the Roses, there's a bunch of sexual tension behind all of their fights in that movie. There's a bunch of electricity behind all their fights in that movie. When we see them in Romancing the Stone, it's sort of the same dynamic, but in a much less dangerous and not way, in that they're going to they clash at the beginning, and she doesn't trust him, and he's like, who is this broad who's messing up my game plan and all this stuff, and they get together anyway, and then we see how that pans out over the long term. Basically, I mean, you could consider those movies a trilogy almost if you really wanted to.
For them.
By the way, War of the Roses, you say how they meet cute in the beginning of the film, but what's the point? You know that they're doomed. You know that they're not going to end up together. You know it's going to be a really, really disturbing movie. I'm sorry, but War of the Roses, I think Danny DeVito directed that movie.
Yeah, he did.
It's a disturbing film. Geez, I mean. And,
it shows the excess.
Jewel of the Nile is a cash grab. I know we're not talking about.
We said couple. We didn't say happy or successful couple. We said couple.
I know we're talking. I agree with you. We're not talking about greatest movie of these bunches here, but. To say that the Han and Leia was felt added in, I disagree. I felt like it was what elevated the Star Wars trilogy.
I think it was an expectation.
It was not. No, I mean it elevated.
And I love those movies.
Hang on, it elevated the Star Wars trilogy to a level that the original film did not have, and none of the Star Wars films afterwards have not been able to reach. And it was because of two things: I am your father. And I am your father, and because I love you, I know. That moment of heartbreak. I mean, he was supposed to say, "I love you too," and after before they broke for lunch, Harrison Ford ad-libbed, "I know," and Irvin Kershner, the director, was like, "Oh my God, that's gold," and it worked. It still holds up. Their romance still holds up. Their chemistry still holds up. It is, and by the way, there's no invasion of personal space there. He was seducing her, and she fell for it. It was consensual. So don't say that he invaded her space.
He does.
She went for it. She absolutely went for it.
Scott, you're on a roll. Why don't you go ahead and turn this into your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. I was going to actually go with Harrison Ford and Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark because they were equals in that movie. But I really thought about how Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, because they were sparring and they wanted to hate each other, but they couldn't resist each other. That irresistible quality, we felt it before they acted on it, and we wanted it to happen. When it did, it was a reward, it was a payoff, and still, almost 40 years later, it still pays off.
It was an expectation.
All right,
really
Sam.
Quick, I just wanted to point out with your movie, you do have a slight advantage when you have 3 movies to see these actors get to play off of each other and really grow, and they're able to explore their relationship. But what's special about Splash? You say that it's not as big as Star Wars. I would never like to try to fight that. Maybe it's on par with Romancing the Stone, but it's this cult classic where even though it doesn't have the time, like over 3 movies, to explore these 2 actors together in these scenes, in one movie you get a full romance, and also sometimes I don't need to see them fight. I just want to see a couple come together. Maybe they have a few problems along the way, but they're able to figure it out and have a happy ending. And in Splash, we get that between these 2 absolutely charming individuals. And she's a mermaid. I mean, again, she's a mermaid. I didn't say that earlier.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. She splashes because she's a mermaid.
Thanks, Sam. KLEE.
I took this question to be what was the greatest on-screen couple of the 80s, and I chose these 2 because they did so many movies together, because their first on-screen coupling was so successful. They were such a great couple in that movie. They had such chemistry that Hollywood said, let's give these people 2 more movies to be together. And that's why I chose Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas. They had such an amazing on-screen chemistry in Romancing the Stone that translated even as not a good a movie as Jewel of the Nile is. It's still that chemistry is still there if you go back and watch it, and then it's still present in War of the Roses, in which they are fighting, which every couple does. So even though it wasn't planned for them to be explored across these 3 movies, we still got that because they were such a great couple in their very first on-screen pairing. And I actually almost chose Mel Gibson and Danny Glover for the same reason.
You know what?
All right. They were dynamic. They were a dynamic duo. Dan Murrell, what do we have in the fact zone?
I mean, again, this is a lot of preference. A couple things, not really corrections, just to back up. Yeah, Nora Ephron. Wonderful writer and director, wrote When Harry Met Sally, went on to...
maybe the queen of rom-coms, huh?
Definitely in the conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely in the conversation. Kathleen Turner, that is a true story. She revealed that she and Michael Douglas were on the verge of starting an affair on the set of Romancing the Stone when Michael Douglas's wife showed up to remind her that they were still married. And so she said that she backed off. Kathleen Turner also claimed that following Body Heat, that Michael Douglas, Warren Beatty, and Jack Nicholson all decided to bet on who would get her first. So
Wow.
the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Warren Beatty.
Interesting fun facts. And one more fun fact.
She said it was none of them, by the way. She thought it was pretty gross.
Because it's gross.
Yeah.
And then what eventually happened, Michael Douglas left his wife and took up with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yes.
Danielle, your thoughts on this round?
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is... Y'all are really bringing the arguments and the passion with this. I am loving this fight, even just getting to watch from over on the couch. I have notes, because I always take notes, because I'm a huge nerd.
Dedicated.
That's a word for it. Yeah, I really liked everyone's points. Sam, I really appreciated your point about, like, sometimes you just want to watch some people be in love, and you don't necessarily want there to be, like, a lot of arguing and fighting. Scott, you're right. Leia and Han are iconic, but I have to say, as far as the points that she brought up about, the reason why they made so many movies because of their chemistry together, when I do think of 80s couples, it's like she said, that is who I think about, so I've got to go with KLEE on this one.
Thank you, Danielle.
That's one for KLEE. Sam, I really appreciate you bringing up an underappreciated classic in Splash. Just a delightful movie. Early Ron Howard directed.
Like third movie, second movie.
Yeah.
Why did you pick Meg Ryan?
To me it came down to Scott and KLEE. Scott, you really just pinned those iconic moments. But I thought KLEE, you painted that well-rounded picture, and I think you brought across the point that even in War of the Roses, where they are at odds, there's passion and the fighting. You have to click to be able to have a really watchable fight, and I feel like that happened. And I thought you painted the more compelling picture there. I also go with KLEE. KLEE, you take the points.
Very good, KLEE. Very good.
Nice. And Romancing the Stone is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah, Splash is one of my all-time favorites. And I love it. I almost wore my Star Wars leggings until I saw your pick, and I was like, I'm not giving him any.
Damn close.
I went for the bling.
So moving on to the speed round will be KLEE and Scott. Sam, thank you for playing.
Thank you, guys.
I'll come to you for some opinions along the way.
Stick around,
but
you stick.
Let's
I'm happy.
let's move into the speed round. All right, so here's how it works. I will ask the question. Call out your answers. The first person that I hear, that person will get the first chance to elaborate on their answer. And it's 20 seconds, and then 10-second rebuttal, 10-second rebuttal. All right?
Okay.
Y'all ready for this?
I'm nervous, but let's go.
All right.
I'm too.
Dan Murrell is on the timer.
Got the timer.
Let's go. Question one of the speed round. So, we saw Sean Connery play Indiana Jones's dad in 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which we brought up earlier in these movie fights. Who should play Indiana Jones's mom in a movie?
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda.
Oh, I'm going to go with Audrey Hepburn.
Okay.
Audrey Hepburn.
Going with dead people, that's fine.
All right. I heard KLEE first. Your 20 seconds will start as soon as you speak.
Audrey Hepburn is dead.
Not in 1989, she wasn't.
Okay. And I wanted to go with somebody, since Sean Connery is only about 10 or 11 years older than Harrison Ford. Jane Fonda is around in that same time frame. So I wanted to give it another actress that was in that same realm, because if we're gonna play with the math, let's play with that damn math. At the same time, I think that she would make a great counterpoint. Sorry, damn it.
Okay, Audrey Hepburn was very much alive, and she made her last movie. It was either in 1989 or 1990 with Steven Spielberg in Always.
Yes.
So why not work with Steven Spielberg again in Indiana Jones, in that year? And she would have had great chemistry with Sean Connery, and she would have had great chemistry with Harrison Ford. She's an icon, and she's old enough to play Harrison Ford's mom.
10-second rebuttal.
Jane Fonda also has those same points going for her, so I don't see that as any sort of negation of my choice. At the same time, I think that Jane Fonda is actually within the same age range as Sean Connery.
Okay, Audrey Hepburn is an icon, and to have her and Sean Connery together in the same movie playing Indiana Jones' mother, it would have taken the movie to a whole new level.
Jane Fonda also an icon.
Does that count?
No. All right, Dan Murrell.
Got it in there.
Two good picks, but for me, Scott made the better case, so I'm going to go with Scott.
One for Scott. Danielle?
Yeah, these were both good arguments, but I do feel like the age thing, we kind of got wrapped up into that, where I feel like Scott had more varied arguments for why Audrey Hepburn would work, so I gotta go with Scott.
Yeah, I got stuff.
All right. Scott takes the point. It's 3-1. This is game point. Clee, you need this to keep her going. Driving Miss Daisy was the Best Picture winner for 1989. What movie character, any movie from any decade, would make the worst chauffeur?
Pee Wee Herman.
Godzilla.
All right. We have Pee-wee. We have Godzilla. Scott.
Okay, Pee Wee Herman. Can you imagine this guy after Pee Wee's Big Adventure, Tim Burton's first feature film? Can you imagine this guy driving a car? La 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 la. Ha ha. I know you're about to let him by. He'd be so annoying. And by the way, Pee Wee Herman is an actual person who can drive a car. He proved he can drive a bike, so he can drive a car. Godzilla cannot fit into a car. Boom.
You just made my point. Godzilla can't drive a car. So
Well, your time. Okay. Wait till again. Wait till till it's your turn. Clee. Now it's your turn.
You just made my point. Godzilla can't drive a car. He's literally a monster who cannot drive a car, who would just step on your car, eat your car, or sit on your car, or blow up your car with his fire breath. He would make a terrible chauffeur because he cannot literally do the job. He didn't say you had to be a human or have the ability to drive a car.
Okay, if he's not getting in the car, then he's not a chauffeur. He's not a person. He's going to step in the car. So what kind of a chauffeur is that? He has to be in the car driving. Pee Wee Herman can do that, and he's one of the most annoying people on the face of the earth, and that qualifies.
10-second rebuttal, Clee.
I mean, if we're going with Pee Wee Herman and Blow, he can drive a car and not be an annoying person. He'd just be a little bit coked up. But Godzilla literally cannot do the job. So there was no part of that question that said that it had to be a human person who was capable of driving a car.
You just said he can't do the job.
Okay, time. Okay, so we started like parsing our words and semantics of if you hire him for a chauffeur, you know what? If I'm like, okay, Godzilla's my chauffeur, like I could still call him a chauffeur, and he could still not do the job. So I think you could. Conceivably, he would be a terrible chauffeur, is what I'm trying to say. Also, it was Paul Rubens in Blow, not Pee Wee Herman in Blow. But you know what?
I was super excited.
That would have been amazing. like huge drug deal going down. It's like, hello. You know what? I'm going Clee with Godzilla because he would be a terrible. I would never get to work.
It's not getting in. He can't fit the freaking car.
Pick it up.
Okay, that's your argument. I heard her. Dan.
I'm sitting here trying to decide if Clee's answer is the worst strategy I've ever heard or the best strategy I've ever heard.
Right?
As soon as she picked that, I was like, oh, she's trying to get on that board.
Right on that one.
I gotta say, I'm taking my inspiration from Vanessa Britton.
I'm gonna say yes, so I'm gonna go Clee.
Yeah.
I would say Clee.
All right, Clee, you get the point. Yeah, Godzilla would not drive your car. He'd destroy your car. What a terrible chauffeur. He'd step on it. All right.
Oh my God.
It's 3-2. Still game point. Clee, you need this to tie it up. Scott, you need this to take the game. Better 1989 kids film. Brave Little Toaster or All Dogs Go to Heaven?
All dogs go to heaven.
God damn it!
All right.
I've never seen Brave Little Toaster.
Okay, usually you don't admit that till after the Okay, so we heard Scott first with All Dogs. KLEE's on deck. Scott.
Okay, All Dogs Go to Heaven is a minor animated classic directed by Don Bluth, who was an animation pioneer and definitely a successful animated filmmaker. It had a great voiceover cast. I believe Burt Reynolds was one of the voices in that movie. It was a charming film, a film that still holds up. And who doesn't love a movie about dogs?
Time.
Yeah, I waited for my turn. Brave Little Toaster. Like I said, I've never seen it, but I'm going to assume that it probably sparked a lot of imaginations because what other way would you want to watch a movie that's literally about a toaster? So I think it would spark a lot of imagination in kids when I think all kids' entertainment should at least have some sort of educational aspect or any aspect that sparks their thought processes and helps them develop brain synapses. Is that how kids work?
Okay, hard to argue for a movie you've never seen. I have seen All Dogs Go to Heaven, and again, I remember in 1989 when I was, I was 21, and I saw it. I thought it held up as a grown-up.
Well, I was a little bit old to see Brave Little Toaster in 1989, so that's probably why I've never seen it. But I argue that a movie should spark a kid's imagination, and I feel like any movie that's called Brave Little Toaster should do that.
All right. Danielle.
KLEE, I love your face. I love that we go from literally arguing that you had the best strategy in the game to you immediately admitting you've never seen the movie. I was kind of hoping she would just start making up her own plot points at one point. I'm sorry, I gotta give this one to Scott. You can't admit that you haven't seen the movie.
Came out.
True story. All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's a phrase that I use to this day. Scott MANTZ, you take movie fights. You get that point.
Thank you,
Scored
my
it
son.
too.
Thank you to my gracious competitors. Thank you to the Dans. Woo!
Please tell us where we can find you.
Okay, well, you can find me right here because I'm sitting here next to you. And
Heck yeah.
So it's my first time really like chatting with you about movies. KLEE, same with you. I got to have you on my movie review show, which I host for Collider Video. It's called Movie Review Talk. Every Friday morning, I tape it live at 9 a.m. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Movie MANTZ, and you can probably catch me at a lot of the theaters in LA moderating post-screening Q&As with actors and filmmakers.
Yeah, you do a wonderful job at that, and find them at the ArcLight or wherever, talking to Emily Blunt, Nicole Kidman, you name it. Scott, great to have you. Sam, so many good choices today, so many good points. Thank you for being here, good sir.
Thank you.
Please give some shout-outs. Tell us where we can find you.
Oh yeah, you can find me at Only Stupid Answers everywhere that matters. It's a podcast, talk about movies, TV shows, comic books. I'm over at New Rockstars as well. Those are the breakdown videos. It's like, where the Easter eggs are in this trailer. If that's me, I'm your guy for that one. And you can just find me at Sam BASHOR everywhere else that matters.
Awesome, Sam. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you, man.
Sam.
KLEE Wiggins. Oh, you really brought it today. You had some
Thank you.
awesome
I was just trying to redeem myself
points.
from my crushing defeat of the last time.
Well, consider yourself redeemed, and we'd love to have you back. Please give some shouts and whatnot.
Just follow me on the social medias at KLEE the Pimp SF on Instagram and at KLEE the Pimp on Twitter. I'm on a bunch of different podcasts, mostly as a guest. I don't really host my own podcast these days. But you can follow the KLEE and Ed Show page on Facebook. We're going to start and try posting our arguments on there again like we used to.
With Mr. Ed Greer,
Mr. Ed
great
Greer.
friend of the family.
Yeah, friend of the show, Ed Greer. And you can, if you want to catch me on other podcasts, Star Wars Minute is one I've been on quite a few times. So there's
And you argued against Han and Leia. How dare you?
I know, and I've been on that show 15 times.
Sometimes in movie fights, desperate times calls for desperate measures.
Yeah.
KLEE, thank you so much. Let's go to the Dan Cam. Dan Murrell, thank you so much, good sir.
Yes,
sir. Dan, anything you want to shout out today?
Love and happiness.
Yes.
Yeah, why not, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Love and happiness, great stuff.
Happy birthday, Dan. Hashtag everyone watching, everyone listening. Make sure you go on Twitter and Instagram or Facebook or MySpace if you're still using it, and give everyone a happy birthday, Dan hashtag.
Yes.
You know what's going to be funny is if this airs in July and my birthday But I'll take the birthday wishes anytime.
Happy half birthday.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Daniel Radford, thank you for holding it down there with your own opinions today, without the polls.
I'm a person.
Yes, true story.
Yeah, you can again just find me on all the socials at Danielle Radford on Instagram. I'm at Danielle_Radford. I do have a Patreon where we've been watching. I've been expanding beyond wrestling because I realize a lot of people are like, I really like you, but I'm not going to listen to you talk about wrestling, girl. And I was like, point taken. I get that that's not for everyone. So I've been doing a lot more like live chats of different movies. So yeah, if you want to hang out with us over there, it's really, really fun. And yeah, there's some wrestles, but you know, I like to mix it up now.
Like, when I'm thinking of fun people to hang out with, Daniel Radford. Who wouldn't want to hang out with Daniel Radford and just, like, talk about a movie and make fun of it? That sounds awesome.
That's literally, we did the Christmas Prince 2 with me having never seen the Christmas Prince 1, and I will never see the Christmas Prince 2. And it was amazing.
That sounds great.
Oh, watch those Hallmark movies. They're amazing.
You guys are all amazing, and y'all are amazing for watching. Thank you for watching Movie Fights. Shout out to Owl Nation. Hoot. Percival in the house. And hit me up on Instagram and Twitter at Hal Rudnick. And big thanks to Billy Biz doing double duty on the board and producing today. And thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.